Well, I just want to welcome you in again one more time. My name is James, and I'm the executive pastor here at New Day. And if you're watching online, thank you for joining us. As you watch this sermon this morning, I invite you, just as you have thoughts or, as something gets said, feel free to drop it in the chat. Just interact with kind of what we're doing here this morning. And thank you so much for watching us. I'm excited this morning because we're in a new series called Smartphone Theology. And what I want to do is I want to date myself a little bit this morning, and I want to take some of us back to the year 1999. I was about 12 years old, and something came in the mail that would change my life forever. And I have a picture of it. Hopefully we'll throw it up on the screen. This came in the mail in the year 1999. And it was a free trial to something called America Online, and 500 hours free. And this was my first foray into what's known as the internet. And back in the day, internet is not something that we all had or could take for granted. And I remember getting this CD, and my family, we were kind of late adopters to this thing called the internet. But we got these free trial CDs, which AOL used to send out to get people to use their service, and it would give you free hours online. And so you would put your CD-ROM into the computer, like click the little eject tray, right? And the CD-ROM would go in there, and you would download it, and all of a sudden you would get free hours to the internet. And so I used sites like Ask Jeeves. I went to Homestar Runner and all those kind of like Newbound, those kind of sites like that. And I just remember like kind of the early days of the internet. And in fact, I was talking to our worship leader, Britton, who we like to pick on because he was born in the year 2002. And I showed him the video that I'm about to show you guys. And I want to tell you what I told him when he asked the question, is this real? I want to say, yes, this was real. This is how you got on the internet in 1999. Oh, it's still going. And then if you're from 1999, if you were around, what happens when you log on to America Online? What do you hear? You've got mail. That was how we really got on the internet back in the day. Your computer was not just on the internet, you had to dial up to the internet. And you could be on the internet for as long as you wanted to, as long as nobody wanted to use the phone, right? Because you couldn't do both of those things at the same time. I was looking up some other facts about kind of the early internet, and in the early internet, we had an internet speed of 56 kilobytes per second, which is not very fast. And so when you wanted to download a song illegally from Napster, it would take about 3 days as long as nobody was on the computer, right? And I remember I would download a song on Napster, and I would leave because we had to take turns on our one computer in our house. And I remember I would come back, and the song like failed to download, right? And so it's just the pain of the early days was tough. These days, the internet, I was looking this up, the internet, if you think about how large the internet is, it is 21 petabytes of information. And I think a petabyte is like maybe 1 million gigabytes. And so the internet, when you think about its size, is like 21 million gigabytes and getting bigger every single year. The size of the internet doubles every single year. And so we live in a very unique time in which the internet is ubiquitous, right? It wasn't like the early days where we all had to dial up and it was slow and there was a limited number of websites. Now there's internet everywhere, and pretty much everyone has a smartphone. I asked that question, what was your first phone? And I definitely had a Razr flip phone, but my first smartphone was called a Motorola Droid, right? Because we didn't get the iPhone at first. We got something called the Motorola Droid, and you literally like would slide the phone up, and it had the keypad underneath, and that's how you texted people, was on this keypad that was actually on the phone. And so I can just remember how this technology just transformed my life and transformed the lives of my family and everyone around me. And yet we've come so far from those early AOL days. We're in a series called Smartphone Theology, and we want to ask the question, how are our phones shaping us? Ever think about that? Man, this device is so incredibly powerful. Man, if someone from the year 1920, maybe even from the year 1990, if they were to fast forward and enter into our time period, and you were to tell them that you had a device that had access to all information all across the world, and it's in your hand and everyone has one, it would blow their mind how much we have access to. Like, you can use this phone to sit down on your couch in your living room, prop your feet up, have some goldfish crackers or some brownies or whatever, and you can watch literally someone in Ukraine live streaming the Russian invasion. You can also get on this device and watch limitless, literally limitless hours of cat videos. That's not a metaphor. That is literally limitless hours of cat videos. You can get on this device and you can text your mom or a family member. You can Facebook stalk someone who you knew in 5th grade but haven't seen for a really long time, because someone friend requested me from 3rd grade, and I'm like, I don't even remember who this person is, but then I was like, oh yeah, I remember this person, right? This is an incredible device. You can post, literally broadcast to the world. You can do good things with this, right? You can connect with people, you can share the gospel, you can motivate yourself to do things and download apps, and you can also do bad things. You can share misinformation, you can argue with people over the internet, you can look at porn, you can do whatever you want with this device. It offers you limitless access to the world. Here's the problem. I think very few of us think about how this thing is shaping our lives. And what I want to do this morning is I want to just offer a brief step into just being thoughtful on our phones and answer the question, how do we use our phones to glorify God? How do you love God with your phone? The Bible calls us to love God, and we'll talk about that from a verse in a moment, but how do you do that? And your device is discipling you every single day. It's discipling your kids every single day. It's teaching us how to live. It's teaching us to identify what's important and what's not important. It's teaching us what should make us anxious and what shouldn't make us anxious. And so we're on this thing every single day, and I wonder, do we ever ask the question, how is this impacting my relationship with God? How is it impacting it, right? Like, I'll be honest, confession time, I don't like plop down on the couch after we put Cameron down at like 7:30. We put him down, and I go right on the couch, and I grab, a snack and some milk or whatever, and I'm sitting down, and I'm scrolling. My first thought is not, man, how is this impacting my soul tonight? And I doubt you think about that as well. We give little thought to how it's rewiring our brain and its capacity to love God and love people. Our default for our phone is not usually mindful, it's usually mindless, right? We use our phone to disengage from the world and from reality, right? Let me just take a step back. I've had a hard day. Let me just disengage and just numb out, scroll for a while. We use our phones to unburden ourselves, right? Let's escape from this world and let's just go on Reddit, or let's just scroll on Instagram, right? Let's watch videos. We use our phones to distract ourselves. We use our phones when we're bored and waiting in line. We use our phones all the time, and we don't think about how they're shaping us. Like, does that sound like a recipe for disaster for anyone? Let's give ourselves unfiltered, unlimited access to all the information the world has ever known. And let's do that for 6 hours on average every single day. Let's just stare at this for 6 hours and not think about how it impacts our walk with God. What I hope this morning is I hope to just provide just a very brief, just all I want for us to do this morning is just to be thoughtful with how we use our phones. Just to think about it for a second. What is this doing? How do I use this to love God and love people? Man, how do I take a step back and not just mindlessly use it, but mindfully use it for things that actually help me in my life? That's what I want to do this morning. Long before the invention of the phone in your pocket, God spoke about this incredible technology. The Bible does not use the word smartphone. The Bible does not talk about phones in general, but it does talk about how we use our phones and how we should use our phones. And it talks about it in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. And if you do have your Bible this morning, or if you have your smartphone this morning and the Bible app on your smartphone, you can turn there with me to Matthew chapter 22, starting in verse 37. We got a very small, brief passage this morning, but it is one that is powerful. God spoke about smartphones and technology and its purpose and place in our lives when Jesus said this, verse 37, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And a second, it's like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." You and I were not designed to be shaped by a screen. We weren't designed to be discipled by a screen. We weren't designed to be shaped by an algorithm. We were designed to be shaped by an incredible love. We were designed to look at God, who has revealed himself as a loving creator, to look at him and allow that to grow and develop in our life and help us to respond so that we might be people of love. That's what we were created and designed to do. Man, you are loved by God, and your soul and your mind and your family and your heart needs to be shaped by an increasing understanding of how deeply God loves you. That's what we're meant to be shaped by. So this morning, if you're taking notes, as you're thinking about how do we love God with our phone, I want to share this. The purpose of your phone is to shape your heart and to shape your soul and to shape your mind toward love. That is the purpose of your phone. Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind." This is the first and great commandment. God loves, we were designed and created to love him. And so as we think about, no matter what we're doing or what technology is invented, whether it's a razor where you have to click, click, click to text message, or whether it's a smartphone or a computer, all of these things, their purpose, doesn't matter the reason or whoever invented them says their purpose is. What matters is what God says. And God says their purpose is to shape your heart, soul, and mind toward love. There's nothing out of the realm of what we do that's disconnected from this purpose in your life, including your phone. How do we do that? The purpose of this device is to shape my heart toward love, loving God and loving people. How do we do that? I think, number one, we do that by thoughtfully engaging the content that we allow ourselves to see. Romans chapter 12 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." And confession here, as I think about what I look at on the internet and how I scroll on Facebook and Instagram and how I have all these news site subscriptions, as I think about that, I wonder, in those moments, is my mind being renewed after the heart of God? Is this helping me to understand God more, love God more? And studies are showing just the impact that our phones have on us and the way that our brains are even thinking. They're literally rewiring our brains. And I wonder this morning, do we think about how they're rewiring us away from love so often? Wiring our hearts and souls and minds to be anxious, to flip from thing to thing to thing to thing, to comment on someone's post or to argue with someone online. And I wonder, do we think about, are these things shaping us toward love? And trust me, I'm with you. I don't think phones are bad. I use a smartphone, and so I don't think the answer is for us to just completely do away with phones. In fact, there was a time in my life where I was like, you know what, I don't want to do a smartphone. I just don't want to take it, and so I got like a dumb phone, as my dad calls it, and so I had a dumb phone for a while. And I found, you know what? Man, a smartphone is kind of necessary in the world that we live in. We are so connected and everything is so online that you just can't get by, many of us, with a dumb phone. And so I was like, okay, I gotta have a phone. But I don't want to be someone who just uses my phone mindlessly to just disengage from this world that God created and my purpose in this world. I want to be someone who at least is thoughtful about what I'm doing. Man, I remember, I've struggled with this a lot, and my wife can attest that I am, like, addicted to my phone. So confession time, like, whatever your screen time is, I won't make you raise your hand. My screen time, as Apple likes to tell me, is probably in the 6-hour-a-day range. Now, not all of that is, like, looking at the screen. Some of that is, like, Spotify audiobooks, but not as much as I would like you to think. And so I downloaded this app the other day where basically it would like prompt you, if you went to Instagram, it would prompt you by like making you take like 5 deep breaths. Like it would literally like stop you from going to Instagram. And so I downloaded this app and I put it on, and so I would try to go to Instagram, and it would count to 30 before you would actually do it. And it would ask you like, why are you getting on Instagram? Real talk. Guys, in the span of one 24-hour period, I logged onto Instagram 250 times. And I was like, there's no way. I worked, I have a wife, I have a kid. There's no way I looked at it that many times, and yet the data don't lie. And I wonder for many of us, do we maybe underestimate the power and impact this thing is having on us, right? That's why I love the Screen Time app, and I love these apps that show us how often we really are looking at our phone, because they give us a clear picture. Wow, I'm really on this thing a lot. And at the very least, I just wondered this morning, can we be people who are mindful of what we're allowing our eyes to consume? And I love that word, right? Like we get on the internet, you don't just like get on the internet, you consume information on the internet. Your eyes are consuming every moment as you're scrolling. There's a lot of bad stuff out there. A lot of stuff that makes your heart anxious. A lot of stuff that maybe your eyes shouldn't look at. You know, the human heart was not designed to carry the burden of all the weight of all the world's problems, and yet we all have access to that. And even non-followers of Jesus know that we're not allowed, or not really should be designed to do that, because in fact there's a subreddit. I'm a Redditor, so if you're a Redditor this morning, then you're kind of nerdy with me. But there is a subreddit called eye bleach. Has anyone heard of this subreddit before? So eye bleach is a subreddit where all they show and all they post is like really cute cat videos, uplifting, inspirational videos, a video of like a guy holding like 5 owls at once. You know, they got all these things where it makes your heart soar, right? And the reason they do that is because you know that there's a lot of negativity on the internet. And so this is their like safe space to put your eyes in front of something that is uplifting. So even the world knows that our hearts and minds are being shaped by what we look at. But I wonder, do we know that? We love God by being mindful of what our eyes are consuming. Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Maybe I'd take a step farther. If there's anything on the internet or in an app that's true and honorable and just and pure and lovely and commendable, if there's any excellence to be found on the internet, let's go to those things and let's look at those things and protect our eyes and protect our heart from things that shape us away from the love of God. We are not as smart as we think we are. Facebook is showing us that. Facebook and Google and Apple have algorithms that keep us continually on these things. And we think, I can beat the algorithm, and yet we spend so much time on our phone. You cannot beat the algorithm. Has anyone heard of a company called Geek? Nobody? Okay. Geek is a company that I think has its headquarters in Canada. And no one has heard of Geek, and yet Geek is the #1 distributor of porn on the internet. For every guy in here, myself included, who has struggled with that on the internet, probably the video that you have watched or the site that you have gone to is owned by a company called Geek. All the major porn studios are owned by this one company. And I was reading this article about this company that no one has ever heard of, and that's very secretive and has abuse allegations all against it all the time. I was reading this article, and I was finding some surprising statistics. Every second, there are 28,258 distinct users watching porn online, together accounting for an estimated 35% of all content downloads on the internet. The article went on, it said, Geek has such a monopoly on the porn industry, just like Apple has a monopoly and Google has a monopoly. Geek has such a monopoly that a second player can't even get any traction in the market because it is so big. It is so pervasive that no one can even catch up. They have a monopoly over the internet in this regard. And they control so much of what so many people consume. I wonder this morning, will we be honest with ourselves, no matter who you are, whether it's porn or the content that you consume? I wonder, do we think about the fact that there are very powerful spiritual and corporate forces that are beckoning us, not toward love, but toward selfishness and loneliness and self-exaltation. I love how the worst companies are the least transparent, but the God who loves us in his word is the most transparent. I wonder this morning, do you think about what you consume, and are you using your phone as a force for bringing about good and love in your life? Let me give you a quick illustration. I'm not a very active guy, and I'll admit that. I don't eat a ton, so I'm not an overweight guy, but I'm not a very active guy. And yet, last year, I bought some running shoes. They're Nike Pegasus, because we had a runner in our church who said, you got to get these Nike Pegasus. So I bought very expensive Nike Pegasus, because in my mind, I thought if I buy these shoes, I'm going to run, right? That was not the reality. But I had these shoes for a while. Fast forward to this year, I'm with the guys in our small group, and the idea came up for us to run a 5K. So the guys in our small group here at New Day are going to run a 5K. It's a charity run for a missions organization. And I want to put up this app that I started using on my phone, and it's called Couch to 5K. Have you guys heard of this app before? Couch to 5K. Because there's a market of people, myself included, who are not very active and who are on their couch thinking, man, how do I become more active? And so there's an app called Couch to 5K. And so I downloaded this app, and it's supposed to help you become a 5K runner. And I've learned that I don't really like running. It's not fun for me. I've never got a runner's high, and I'm convinced that everyone who runs just like to run so that they can tell people that they're running a marathon or a 5K. So I got to do a humble brag this morning. I'm running a 5K. How fast? Will I finish? I have no idea. I can run for like 30 seconds, right? So I'm like 2 days into this app, and supposedly at the end of like 5 weeks, which is when this run is going to be, I'm going to be a 5K runner if I follow it every day. Now the problem is life is busy, and I get caught up with things, and I don't wake up early, and so this app has a function in which it sends a reminder, right? It's called a push notification. You can see it right there. Next run, week 1, day 3, 8 intervals of a 1-minute run and a 1.5-minute walk. Man, That's how out of shape I am. I'm going to try to do a 1-minute run. All right. These companies know the human condition and that they have to push reminders for us to do something that's good and helpful. So in the same way Facebook reminds us that we have a notification, this app reminds me, hey, James, you should probably get out and you should run because we need that. And I wonder, can we use that same psychology in how we walk with God? Use the apps that we have and the notifications that we choose to receive. Can we use those in a way that push us toward love, not towards selfishness and disengagement? Let me give you a couple of examples of what I try to do on top of this running app. I have the Bible app on my phone, and I have push notifications on my Bible app because I'm a pastor. I still forget to read the Bible. And so I have an app on my phone that pops up and says, hey, you had your quiet time this morning. And you click on it, and it takes me to the Bible app. So instead of my phone being something that disrupts me from the world, I'm using my phone to be something that disrupts me from my default rhythms that don't actually help me. Another example that I have is I have a reminder on my phone to pray for the guys in my small group, because I don't naturally do that. I say I'm going to pray for people, and then I don't pray for them. And I wonder if you're like that with me this morning. And so I put a reminder on my phone, pray for the guys in our small group. And it pops up every single day, every single day. It pushes into my world, but not for distraction, not away from good, but for good. We shouldn't let our phone disrupt us from good. We should let it disrupt us for good this morning. Your phone is meant to shape you toward the love of God. That's number one. Let's look at number two. Look at verse 39 of our passage very quickly. Jesus says, the second commandment is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So in the context of this passage, Jesus is talking with some people who know the Old Testament, they know the Bible, they know it very deeply, and they want to debate with Jesus, and they ask him, hey, what's the best commandment? What's the greatest commandment? There's a lot of commandments. What's the best one? What's the most important one? And in the same breath, Jesus mentions both of these, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, because Jesus sees those as connected, that you can't love your neighbor if you don't love God, because God shows us what love is like. So if you're taking notes this morning, this is point number 2, how to love God with your phone. We love God by loving people more than our phone. We love God by loving people more than our phone. And next week, we're going to talk about this more specifically as we talk about how to love people through our phone. But this morning, what I want to talk about and remind us is that the person in front of us is more important than the millions of people who are not in front of us. And I'm very terrible at this because I am addicted to my phone. And actually, Sarah and I have had a lot of struggle in our marriage because I'm not the best at putting my phone down. And I've had to be reminded that Jesus calls me to love the person in front of me more than the people that aren't in front of me. I wonder, do you do that with your phone? Are the people that you're around, are you present in this moment to love? And I was reading this one article, and this guy says, I think one of the greatest mistakes that people make is thinking, like I did for a while, that being online constantly and on your phone constantly is simply in addition to what you're already doing, right? So I'm hanging out with my friend, or I'm sitting on the couch with my wife, and we're just hanging out together, and so I'm on my phone in addition to that. And he says that's a mistake. He says that's wrong. It really is either or. You are either present or you are in the online world. You can't be in both. We are not designed to multitask. Our brain is not designed to function like that. So I've often talked with Sarah about how, we put Cameron down and we're both sitting on the couch together and we're together, but we're doing things separately online. That's not how we love people, and that's not how we love one another. Loving people says, you know what? I'm going to put this away. I'm going to turn this upside down because you are important to me. I think this is one way that we love people and demonstrate that we love God, by loving people. So how do we do this practically? I'm going to give you guys just a couple of tips this morning on how to digitally disciple your family. I like the way that sounds, so that's why I made it my title, How to Digitally Disciple Your Family. And if you're taking notes, if you're not taking notes, if you have a family this morning, you want to have a family this morning, or if you just want to read this book, I am indebted to a book called The Tech-Wise Family. So I want you to write that down right now. I'm watching, making sure everyone's writing that down. It's called The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. And it is an incredibly helpful book that I'm actually going to walk Sarah and I through on how do we use our phones, how do we use technology in our home to disciple our kids and raise our kids and love our spouse. And it's just a super helpful book. And so I'm indebted to this book for these three things that I want to share with you this morning. Number one, you digitally disciple your family by using screen time on purpose and together instead of mindlessly and alone. You use screen time on purpose. So I have a purpose, right? I pick up my phone. Why did I do that? What am I about to do? And if the answer is like, you know what, I just want to connect with some people on Facebook, that's awesome. But at least I know why I'm picking this up. So I'm doing it mindfully. And we're doing it together as a family. We have maybe designated time where we're doing it, or maybe we're doing something together. Like Sarah and I love to play Settlers of Catan on our phones, right? And so at least we're doing something together in that moment instead of mindlessly and alone. Like the internet is a place where we all retreat. Instead, we do it together. Or maybe we sit down in front of the TV and it's for a specific purpose, right? A specific hope, not just distracting ourselves and disengaging from the world, but we have a reason why we're doing this, and we're doing it together. And this is especially important as we raise kids, and Sarah and I are already seeing Cameron at 2 years old, just like wanting the phone, needing the phone, running to the phone, and man, I can't believe, like, I didn't have the internet growing up, and then I got it, and I'm addicted now. Imagine our kids or your kids. It's incredible how these people, they grew up. They are digital natives. And I wonder, man, have you ever asked, what's the spiritual impact of that app on your kid's life? Sometimes we don't have the answers to that, but we have to be wise about what we allow our kids to see and what we allow them to download. So we use screen time on purpose and together instead of mindlessly and alone. Number two, this is a good one, and I do not do this. Make your phone wake up after you and go to sleep before you. And I love what he says in the book. He says, we need a simple discipline. Our devices should go to bed before we do. And to add a nudge to that discipline, it's by far the best if their bedroom is as far away from ours as possible. And he points out in the book how you and I were made to rest. You were made to rest. You were made to sleep. Even the strongest man on earth has to sleep for at least 8 hours, or sleep for a few hours. Otherwise, your body begins to break down. But phones aren't like that. Man, your phones are always on. They don't need to sleep. You can hook them up, charge them up, but they are always on. They never sleep. You are not a device. You are a human. And we're not designed to intake all of this information 100% of the day, all the time, 24/7. We weren't designed for that. So we need to provide an environment in which our phone has a limit. And so I want to practice this week, and you guys will not know if I do it or not, but Sarah will know if I do it or not, so hold me accountable, darling, to this. I'm going to put my phone in a different room, and I'm going to have a period of time in which I at least do something before I look at my phone. Maybe that's breakfast, making breakfast for the family. Maybe that's reading my Bible. Maybe that's going for a run. Whatever it is, I'm going to do something before I run to my phone because I'm the worst. I think I was looking up. I think it's about 35%, maybe 40% of adults admit that they look at their phone first thing in the morning. And most of the time, the first thing they look at is email or a text message. And just think about it, like how, I mean, if you do this, I do this as well. How dumb is it? The first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I invite the stress of my inbox into my mind first thing in the morning. It makes no sense whatsoever. And yet we do that because it's compulsive. And then we let our phone go to sleep before us, meaning there's a time in the evening in which it's just us and our family, and we connect. Man, some of the sweetest times that we have as a family is when it's me, Sarah, and Cameron in his room, and we're trying to have bedtime with him and trying to read stories, but he just wants to wrestle and hop on pop and all that kind of stuff. And I just, those are the beautiful moments that life is made for. And I wonder, do we shortchange ourselves when we all just disconnect, and the kid's over here with the iPad, and I got my phone, and wife's got her phone, and we're all just doing our thing? Think about even as Cameron goes older and he has access to a smartphone, when we finally give him one, just how he will have access to that all night. He can go on WhatsApp or Snapchat or whatever he wants to go on, whatever is popular in his day, he will be able to do that all the time. And I'm just simply asking the question, is that good or is that not good? Lastly, number 3, if you're taking notes this morning, how to digitally disciple your family. Commit as a family to give up technological privacy. Commit as a family to give up technological privacy. It is not good for anyone to have an online life that is totally unknown to someone else. It is not good for any of us to have that, especially if you're married. When you become one flesh in all respects. And so as I think about how do I set myself up as a follower of Jesus, how do I have someone who leads my family well? Part of that is being someone who is completely open and allows Sarah to have access to all the things that I have access to, whether that's sharing passwords or knowing the thing on my phone or the password lock screen on my phone, whatever it is, just allowing her to speak into that and to know that. And the same for our kids, right? When Cameron grows up, I'm going to know what he does on his phone. I want to know. It's good for me as his father to know. And there are other areas of life in which he will have some privacy, right? He can close the door of his room and I'll knock and he'll have privacy there, but I'm not giving my son, whom I love, unfettered and unlimited access to the dark worldwide internet. I'm just not going to do that because I love him. And even as the Father loves us and puts boundaries, safeguards in our life about what we can and can't do, I want to do that for my son because I love him. This is completely countercultural. And it's something that you have to do as a family. Every person has to commit to that. And you got to commit to it hard when your child's friend is not doing that. And well, why can't I do this? You have to have courage. You have to be bold. And you have to talk to your kid and say, this is why we're doing it. It's for your good. I know you don't understand it, but let's talk about that a little bit more. And it takes courage to do some of these things, these countercultural things that we're talking about. So commit as a family to give up technological privacy. Give your spouse all your passwords. Give them all to your spouse. And set it up with your kids, not just limit it with screen time and put blocks and filters, because that doesn't hit the root issue. The root issue is I love you, and I want you to know that I care about what you're doing and who you're communicating with, as hard as those conversations are, and as much as your kids don't understand it in the moment. Don't just delegate that to filters and blocks, because that does not impact the human heart. Conversation and love is how we do that.